In November 1970, in a remote valley in Norway, hikers found a body burned almost beyond recognition. It would take investigators decades to even guess who she was. They still don't know for certain today. The valley was called Isdal, translated literally, Ice Valley, a rugged, isolated area near the city of Bergen, popular with hikers for its dramatic cliffs and remote trails, but empty enough that a body could remain undiscovered for days. On the morning of November 29th, a father and his two young daughters were hiking through the valley when they came across something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The body of a woman, badly burned, lying among the rocks in a small hollow just off the main trail. Investigators who arrived at the scene found a scene that raised more questions than it answered from the very beginning. Scattered around the body were the melted remains of an umbrella, a nearly empty bottle of liquor, and a set of rubber boots, along with several empty bottles that appeared to have once contained gasoline or a similar accelerant. Nearby, investigators found a quantity of sleeping pills along with fragments of jewelry that had partially survived the intense heat of the fire. The woman's face was burned beyond any possibility of visual recognition, and more disturbingly, her fingertips had been deliberately damaged in a way that appeared intentional, seemingly designed to prevent identification through fingerprinting even if the rest of the investigation succeeded. All identifying labels had been carefully removed from every piece of clothing found on her body, down to the manufacturer tags inside her boots. The initial theory, given the sleeping pills and the isolated location, was suicide. But almost immediately, details emerged that made investigators question that simple conclusion. When police searched a train station locker in Bergen days later, using a claim ticket found among her belongings, they found 2 suitcases registered under one of her many aliases. Inside, investigators discovered a wig carefully packed in tissue paper, several sets of foreign currency from different European countries, and clothing where, once again, every single label had been deliberately cut out or removed. The exact same unusual detail found on the body at the scene, suggesting a consistent and deliberate pattern of behavior rather than a single spontaneous act. They also found a pair of glasses with the lenses replaced with plain, non-prescription glass, strongly suggesting the glasses had been worn purely as part of a physical disguise rather than for any genuine vision correction. Investigators also found a small notebook filled with coded entries, combinations of letters and numbers arranged in patterns that made no immediate sense to local police in 1970. It would take authorities years, and eventually the involvement of professional military code breakers, to determine that the notebook contained a detailed, encrypted record of the woman's recent travels across multiple European cities, including dates, hotel names, and what appeared to be meeting times, all disguised within a private cipher only she seemed to fully understand. As investigators dug deeper into her recent movements in the weeks before her death, an even stranger picture began to emerge. This woman had stayed in numerous hotels throughout Norway and other parts of Europe, always registering under different names, always paying for everything in cash rather than by any traceable method. Hotel staff who were later interviewed by police remembered her as unusually private and quietly cautious, someone who kept to herself, avoided unnecessary conversation, and left almost no personal details behind that staff could later recall with any confidence. She had reportedly been seen with several different travel companions across different cities, though none of these individuals were ever successfully identified or located. Some witnesses described well-dressed men meeting briefly with her in hotel lobbies or train stations before disappearing entirely from any further record. Other witnesses specifically noted that her physical appearance seemed to shift somewhat between different sightings. Different wigs, different styles of clothing, different postures and mannerisms, almost as though she were actively and carefully working to prevent any single witness from being able to recognize her twice. Investigators eventually determined, through painstaking cross-referencing of hotel registries, that this woman had used at least 8 different aliases throughout her documented travels in the months before her death. Every single identity investigators traced led to a dead end. No passport number associated with any of her names matched a real, traceable individual anywhere in available records. No hotel registration, however thoroughly investigated, ever led back to a verifiable background or home address. The combination of these details, the encoded notebook, the deliberate disguises, the untraceable foreign currency, the constantly shifting false identities, and the careful, apparently intentional destruction of her own fingertips led many investigators, both at the time and in later decades of renewed interest, to conclude that this woman may have been operating as a professional intelligence agent, engaged in some form of espionage. Cold War tensions in 1970 were at their height, and Norway's strategic geographic position, bordering the Soviet Union along its northern border, made the country a location of genuine ongoing interest for intelligence operations from multiple governments simultaneously. Some researchers who have studied this case extensively in later decades believe she may have been conducting covert surveillance related to NATO military exercises that were taking place in the surrounding region around the same time period as her death. An official inquest conducted in 1970 ultimately ruled her death a suicide, citing the presence of sleeping pills and the deliberately isolated location as supporting evidence for this conclusion. But numerous inconsistencies surrounding this ruling were never adequately explained by investigators at the time, nor by anyone since. Forensic examination of the body suggested unusual and inconsistent burn patterns that some medical experts have argued in the decades since were not fully consistent with typical cases of self-immolation, though this specific point remains disputed among different forensic specialists who have reviewed the case file. The deliberate destruction of her own fingertips has never been satisfactorily explained under any straightforward suicide theory, since a person planning to end their own life would presumably have no clear motivation to specifically prevent their own body from being identified afterward. For several decades following her death, the case remained a largely forgotten local legend within Norway, known mostly to older residents of Bergen and to those who had worked directly in Norwegian law enforcement during that era. It wasn't until international journalists and true crime researchers rediscovered the case decades later, publishing renewed articles and documentaries, that modern forensic attention was finally brought back to the long-dormant file. In 2016, Norwegian police made the decision to exhume the woman's remains from her original burial site, in a determined effort to finally identify her using modern DNA analysis techniques that simply hadn't existed in 1970. Investigators hoped that decades of forensic advancement could succeed where the original technology of the era had completely failed. The DNA results provided a partial answer, suggesting through isotope analysis of her teeth and bone structure that she had likely been born somewhere in continental Europe, possibly in France or Germany, based on the specific chemical signatures found within her remains. But even armed with this narrowed geographic information, no definitive personal identity has ever been successfully confirmed. Her true name, her actual nationality, her family, and the precise reason she ultimately died in that remote Norwegian valley remain completely and entirely unknown to this day. The case became widely known internationally as the Isdal woman, Isdalskvinnen, in her adopted Norwegian home, named simply after the isolated valley where her body was originally discovered, since no other name could ever be confidently confirmed as legitimately belonging to her. To this day, no government agency, whether from Norway itself, from any other NATO member country, or from any of the former Soviet Union's intelligence services, has ever officially acknowledged any direct connection to this woman, nor has any government ever confirmed her true identity through official channels. Whether she was a professional spy caught in the middle of a Cold War operation that went catastrophically wrong, a private citizen with some other elaborate personal reason to completely hide her identity, or something else entirely that investigators have never even considered, remains a complete and total mystery. Her remains are buried today in a quiet cemetery in Bergen, marked only with a small memorial stone identifying her simply as the Isdal woman, in the continued absence of any name that anyone has ever been able to confirm as genuinely her own. More than 50 years later, this remains one of the most well-documented, unidentified person cases in modern European history, a woman who went to extraordinary, almost professional lengths to erase every conceivable trace of who she truly was, and succeeded so completely in that effort that even her own name ultimately died with her in that isolated valley. If this story unsettled you, imagine being one of the investigators who spent literal decades chasing a woman who left behind 8 different names, and not one of them ever confirmed as real. If you want more real unsolved mysteries like this one, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. New stories are coming every week, and this is far from the strangest one still to come.